So the Master Aryadeva says that a verse in which he says that first one has to turn away from non-virtue. This is in reference to the fundamental practice that pertains to the person of the lesser objective or lesser scope. At the beginning, we have to at the very beginning, we have to make as our fundamental practice avoidance of engaging in non-virtuous negative sorts of behavior, negative activities, because this negative karma, as mentioned earlier, impregnates our mind streams, and then when that result of that is born, then it will arise as suffering. And in the case of non-virtuous actions, the specific kind of result that is impelled, that is projected and actualized by that kind of negative karma is rebirth in the lower realms of existence, where one has to suffer incredible torments and has no kind of opportunity to do anything other than suffer. So in order to avoid that sort of state, one has to, at the beginning, engage in the initial practice that is the root, the basis for all other practices, and that's the initial practice for persons of lesser scope, is to engage in the avoidance of non-virtuous kinds of actions. This actually, when one goes for refuge as a person of with the type of refuge that one takes in the Buddha Dharma Sangha as a person of lesser scope, is relying upon them to enable you to avoid as a means of and by taking refuge in them, one also commits to avoiding of the 10 sorts of non-virtuous actions, and that itself is the principal refuge there, the avoidance of these negative actions. So that's the initial level of practice.
Oh yeah, 저는 미바 타보도 세. 다 파둔 다닌 도바 당 세대라. 아니 자단이 송을 하리. 파둔 다닌 도바 당 세가라. 다 전다 가서 우리 미게빌에 기지 아니 그 미게지 본거 수좀 랜데 아니 수신도 라외 온도 사람이 리덴도 버치 토바 이나양 아니 다 가르래서나 양양 아니 다 가르래서나 미게빌에 그네 롱제지 아니 당시 말이 받지 마사나 라양 아니 가소리 아무 가소리 미게빌에 사네 아니 양 안로 아니 가소리 안로 제대 동아 빠트면 받지 년주이 받지 다 타쳐와 된조 양네 양도당 된조 양단 양용네 아니 된조를 야 깨워듯이 이나양 양 아니 미게빌에 그네 롱제지 아니 니몬데 마사나 라양 아니 미게빌에 그네 니몬데 그네 라댕아 아니 가소리 미기위 레사네 아니 안로 제주요 인도인자 다 진주를 치대요래 된로 야나 연조나 내가 다 치도 마마서 때때를 가자 된로를 야나 양도 요나 양 아니 미기위 내 대다기 그네 논지 그 주님은 세바지 마주나 라양 안로 진니 동안 빠도면 번영 거와 타쳐봐 인상 다 되기 저 그네 논지 그 아니 니몬 도그해 파도 단도 받아 니몬 대라양 아니 다 차라마보 예배 나네 파도 단은 도바타 세게다데 란제 티비 자이도 오마기 되베기 란제 티비 자이도 초바지 비침바 오 도바탕 자야지 파도 단은 도바탕 란제 티비 자이도 침비침바 도지사바 아니 티유기나 랑바기 아니 미기위레서 바지 도고와 인장 아니 저기 인생 도발라 아니 림바 신도 가자 차리 라바네 갖고 와 인자 파도 단에 도바탕 직체 재단 직태체 아야.
So then even so this basic level of avoidance, turning away from non-virtue, that practice which is achieved through taking up the ethical discipline of avoiding the 10 kinds of non-virtuous actions. That is again the fundamental practice, and that will stop one from creating more negative, non-virtuous, non-meritorious action that will impel you to take rebirth in the lower realms of existence. And then, in addition to that, one has to augment that level of practice with the creation of virtue, doing positive kinds of actions, such as being generous and so forth. And those virtuous actions that you engage in serve as the principal cause that induces you to be reborn in a higher state of existence. But even if you have adopted the practice at that level, and you've by doing that kind of practice, you're ensuring that you're going to be reborn into a good state of existence in the next life. And even if you do that for multiple lives in chain, in sequence, you're nevertheless still subject to eventually falling into a lower state of existence, because as long as one is under the control of the mental afflictions, and particularly here ignorance, one has the primary agent that activates the negative karma that is that lies sort of dormant within our mind streams, so that even if you're born into a positive state of existence over and over and over again, as long as you have the mental afflictions and particularly ignorance within your mind, then eventually that ignorance is going to act as the motivating force that causes you to engage in some kind of negative behavior, and that negative behavior will then trigger the actualization of negative kinds of karmic imprints that you have resident within your mind stream, and then eventually you'll fall into a lower state of existence. So Master Aryadeva says that in the middle, one needs to negate the self. Here, this has multiple ways of, you can construe the sense of self here that has to be negated in multiple ways. At the basic level, if you take it as in reference to the coarse level of the misconception of the self, and the coarser level of realizing selflessness, it has to do with the recognition, coming to understand that there's no such thing as a self-sufficient self within the person. The person is not qualified or doesn't have the property of having a self-sufficient, a self which is a self-sufficient substance. So that level of recognition is able to avert a coarse level of the misconception of the self.
Oh yeah, Padu Tani Toba Tang say Kala. Ani dancing rabak, Tanjuaki Debaki dancing rabak. Oma Debaki dancing Chawaki Shanyu Kayatara, Padu Tani Toba Tang. Tamatashi Kundoba said, Tenta, or Tanju Lula, Kasangashi, Shuanashi, Cheni. 아니 거의 자와주 마리바 아니 가사도 취단지 그 마리바 타만다시 군도바 세리 어디 말로나 다 레그네 longe 그 마리바 말로나 아니 레 마리바도 그네 라와게 레데사 아니 레 소나 많이 빌레 카르사나사 레데 데부 아니 가산 시원하시 제는 민디 아니 가소리 denrodan ngandro jine dunga patu meba nyongwa de tachewa yinzang tajishwane denro yane yongne dewa mambo jeje ne chine ngaso midene mise dunga namsu tong chene oda jinju de songare denro la yane yandu yonga rede jewa reji yina yang ani ngaso de jeje ge le kuna lonje je ge mariba de masa pe patu ani mariba de kuna long le songre oti 인상 아니 말이 그나 레사냥 나선도 동고요 인상 다 가려고 그래서나 말이 바pon제기 님보 안에 다음에 봤다나 봐. 때나 배고와 인상. 요와 된도 제와데 마서와 나시지레 스거와레가. 간시 코요코로 따도 카와네 나도 시완 주네 떼와 담라 데셈바 전에 시자와 있네 제소와 나시세. 간 코요코 따도 카와레데 멘도네 된도라 직대와레데 마서 담레 마도 아니 자와 단제 말이 봐지 마잖아. 아니 라양가서도 동구레 전에 송아 인장다 타마다 시군도 봐 세가라 아니 선언 많이 빌레지 자와 아니 단지 말이 봐대 아니 도바치 제일 까네 다 대도바치 그래 타마다 시군도 봐 타마 단지 말이 봐.
So this verse concludes by the last line of it, or third line of it says that finally one has to destroy all views. At the end, one has to destroy all views. Here, the view that's being referred to is the view which misapprehends the self as being real. So this is referring then to the subtler level of the selflessness of persons as it's understood by the Prasangika school. The lower schools of philosophy consider this what the misconception of the person as having a self, which is a self-sufficient substance, as the subtle level of the selflessness of a person. But in the Prasangika school, that's merely a coarse, rough level of understanding the selflessness of a person. Now, in the Prasangika school, then, the recognition or knowledge that the self is not real as it appears, it doesn't exist as it appears, and is empty of existing by means of its own intrinsic existence. That is the subtle level of understanding selflessness. And that itself is, that knowledge or understanding itself is what destroys all views, all of the wrong views. Whether you're talking about ignorance per se, it destroys that. And it also destroys the basis for the activation of the other mental afflictions within one. So the reason that is the culmination here is because even if you're reborn multiple times in pleasant conditions in samsara, in good sorts of lives with pleasure and all of the comfortable conditions that make life in samsara conventionally pleasurable, that sort of situation doesn't exist forever, but rather it's eventually will degrade into, and you'll eventually fall into a lower state of existence as long as you're under the control of the basic ignorance which creates samsara. So it's also stated in the introduction to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Shantideva, where he says that similar kind of notion that even if you're reborn in happy sorts of existences over and over again, that's just really sort of like a rest or a break from the extreme sufferings of the lower realms, where one spends most of one's time in samsara. The samsara is a circle or a cycle, in that one is dies and is reborn and dies and is reborn over and over and over again multiple times, and most of those are spent in these lower realms of existence where there's intense and unimaginable for us sufferings that are incredibly harsh and long-lasting. So in order to get rid of the very root of samsara, which stops one from being reborn in these lower states of existence forever, then one has to establish the view, the correct view, which understands the selflessness of things, And that is what, that proper understanding, establishment of the view, and proper understanding of it is what negates the ignorance. And ignorance, again, is the agent that activates the karmic imprints within our mind streams that produce all of the different forms of suffering and different sorts of contaminated experience that we undergo within samsara.
Oh yeah. Tene ta taji yang te karso na patu tanen doba ta tamak tashi kuin doba saidi patu tanen doba saidi ani kasaki tame kishte tanjing shenyu kaba la cha tamak tashi kuin doba saidi 아니 추지단지 시행이 가발잖아 지가 와리 와 가상 공주선반 하신 전에 가사가 다음에 그 시행을 가네 가사가 다음에 때라 밥 티지라 아니 추지단지 그 시행을 가네 추지단에 때라 봐야 돼 난조와기 아니 가서래 다음에 주비신 받는데 지와 현장我다때 딱 가고요 그 다시 나신 체 와 긴장고 주바체 와 이 측디 다중에 지 야부 잘 봐서 간시 콜로 다도 코와니 나도 쉬네 때와 잠라 때리 데셈바 테네 아메림지 자자도 저와 냠나 마냥 군도 참발 주 세네 요아리 와다 당제 말이 바데 말로나 아니 뒤꾼년란데 엘레그빌레사니 아니 덴로 지게와 제지나야 아니 다 배 나서 왔다며 당한도 제 편집이래 뭐도나 양한도 제 편집이래 그래서 당니 아니 나서도 제디 아니 양 누가 봐도 매봐 연구하래서 이단 좋아냠다 마냠 근도 참바 줄서 된로 제와이나 양 된로라 제 저 되는 미개위래라 서였다니 양한도 제니 아니 다 코에나서 어다 참그래 전에 수화인장 다한테 디기 타마 다시 군도 봐 세디 아니 취지 단진 다 가사 단진 어디 코에 자와 인장 감순제와 간도 감순 로리로 간도 내냥 아니 자와 취지 단진 다 가사 단진 로나 레사 바도 레도베 레기나미 이도 도와 주와 인장 다 타마 다시 군도 봐 어디 강기 시에와디 다 텐드기 아름바디 시에와디 아니 바유이 강기 시에 바유이
So then, one way of taking these two lines, the two middle lines of this verse, is taking, as we mentioned already, that the middle line, which says in the middle, one has to negate or turn away from, negate the self. That can be taken as the understanding of the selflessness of persons. And if we take it from the Prasangika position, we can say that here it can be taken also as the understanding the subtle selflessness of persons, which is the understanding that the person is not established as real as it appears, but does not exist by means of its own intrinsic nature, and if we do it that way, and then we can take the second line, the third line is saying it is that refers to both the destruction of both the misconception of the self of persons and the misconception of the self of phenomena together, which eliminates the entire basis of samsara completely. That's an appropriate way to construe this as well. If you do it that way, then you could say that this verse expresses the order or sequence in which a person comes to understand selflessness, because as we mentioned earlier, when it comes to understanding selflessness or emptiness, then it's the case that one understands the selflessness of persons first, and then subsequently fully understands the selflessness of phenomena. But in any case, when once one has gained a thorough comprehension of the selflessness of persons and phenomena, that serves as the antidote, counteragent, which destroys one's misapprehension of the conceived object of this ignorance, which misconceives the person or misconceives phenomena. And so that thorough understanding as the negation of that misapprehension, the apprehension of that conceived object, non-existent, fictitious conceived object of the ignorance, that then stops one from engaging in further either virtuous or non-virtuous actions, that is, virtuous actions which are contaminated by nature, or non-virtuous actions, and therefore one no longer creates the cause for further existence within samsara. And on top of that, the elimination of ignorance removes the agent which is sort of like the motive force to actualize the propensities that are already latent or dormant within one's mind stream, so that without the agent that activates them, then they can't, even if they're still there, they can't give rise to their result. And therefore, once this is fully accomplished, one doesn't have to undergo further wandering in the samsaric condition as one has previously. Then there's another verse from the Master Shantideva in the Bodhicharya Introduction to the Middle Way, Introduction to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, which, as I mentioned already, that he says that even if you're born over and over again within the most excellent and happy sort of conditions in as a human or a god or whatever, these good states of life, if you're still stuck in samsara, if you're within that samsaric condition, then it's absolutely determined, it's inevitable that one will eventually fall into the lower states of existence and there have to experience limitless sorts of sufferings that are intense and unimaginably harsh.
Oh yeah, that really teaches that do not zawa, quiet zawa, and a dancing imba. That dancing did and Poma Chebala and the Dame Betawa Jule Jokova. Or the Dame Betawa Jule Jokova, that Diwala Ma Cherikana. And Jagaki and Kasori Bende Church Trabata. Ani Dawa Trabata. Ani Papa Lada, Ludula, Shivala, Sawaki, long the Sheji to Chani. Or Sheji Chani in Zang. That did the song about it, the Tando Tawa Jeva, Gila Jevala, Mipa Wade, Anita Ambo Duo Imba, Andu Imba, that the Masung were there. Tambo Mariba Pond de Jan, Tawa Namda Gila Jivi Tendo, Mide Bani, Mondu, Ambo Momba, Ambo Duo Imba, said that.
So this, we've arrived at a subdivision of the text which says that above we've established that the ignorance which grasps at self of person, self of phenomena, and which is this grasping at things as being real in the sense of as if they had a kind of autonomous existence that as they appear to have, a sort of objective or autonomous existence that they appear to have, recognizing that that is the root of samsaric existence. Then the next section of the text describes how someone who desires to get rid of that, to abandon or get rid of that grasping at a self, needs to seek the view of selflessness. And then this has multiple sections, but the first of these is giving, showing that if one doesn't, even though one understands that this is the, even though you wish to get rid of that ignorance, if you don't make effort to seek in order to give rise to the pure view within your mind, then that's stupid. And it explains here why that's the case.
Oh yeah, that's the Maripa Tanzani, Kasaka Tatu Timbi, Maripata, Chijitatu Timbi, Maripa Ni Pangde, Sebashini, De Gurjan Gurlas, De Gurte, Randunga Mite, Dewani De, Dunga de Mumtena, Ane Dunga Yitu, Ane Tansi Maripa Malo Bala, Dunga Misepa Yinzang, De Gurjan Gurla, Ane Dejang, Kasa Debayang Nangos, oh. Girla, any debayan nangos. Tedana, that Casore Sebashi de Gurna, Teda de Shindu, and a dancing Kovitawa Shevala Mibabadans. Teda de Shindu dancing Kovitawa Shevala Mibabadan. Dancing Kovitawa Shewaji, any Kovitawa Shewaji, Shewatanga, that Chodon. 其他我许多们还马过那样桥段怎么桥段讲也讲当真的属于有啊那卡说的学习大图书啊当卡萨个大的就在我卡说的先看了呀马了先看了呀让马路呀让我的到底让我的一把我听着我的啊桥段讲也讲当真的属于有 Rawan wadi ngödenji lungreji lebar kane. Dame be tawa namda gyula gebi chidu mide bani ambo shidu tuwa yinde. Ambo shidu tuwa yimde. Tabada tamja kembe dreji tabada tamja dreba dreba lamji so toyang ane chimenyamba jobi chiro. Sta danze marjem 讲真想有搞的，咱们别到我店了买的呢，俺那他把他参加这边，咱们就说多少人是，这多少人的，谈多样，俺那不起码也不交把人是，我的提送的啊。
So the first passage of the text on this section then says that it's necessary. One should wish to eliminate, to get rid of, or completely eliminate the two forms of misapprehending or grasping at a self. This type of ignorance which has been previously explained. Here, this misapprehension of the self is holding the self to exist as if it was autonomous, whether we're talking about self of persons or a self of phenomena. It's holding the thing as if it existed in an autonomous fashion, not depending upon something else. So that kind of misconception, even though one ought to wish to get rid of that, and the reason it is the case that one ought to wish to get rid of that is because it's as already expressed, it's the fundamental source of samsara. It's the root of samsara from which all of the suffering and such that no one wishes to experience. It arises out of all of that suffering and hardships and such arise from that. So, and it also it appears that one might wish to accomplish that. But even though that's the case, if you don't make effort to understand, even though one wishes to do that, to get rid of it, if one doesn't make effort to understanding the way in which this misapprehension of the self acts as the cause of samsara, as mentioned above, that the way in which samsara originates, the rest of samsara originates from this basic kind of misconception of a self, then yeah, or even if you've recognized some portion of this, you've gotten some portion of this kind of understanding, but you don't make effort to obtain a very clear and definitive ascertainment of this view, then
So
if one only has a little bit of understanding of this, some partial understanding, but doesn't gain this from obtain a understanding of this view that is sort of from the very root of it and thoroughly, then
단정지 수위 유 아니 단정지 수위 유 라와 들어와 아니고 현라라 말을 라와지 오 현라 말을 라마래 왜 라와지 아니 다 가르서는 어딘지 롱르지 롱가 리비고네 때라밥 리비고네 때라밥에 되기 아니 시시기 아니 롱기 마 때라밥아 때라밥발라다 오 대로와 어딘 누리지 레버 까네 롱다 리베 까네 아니 다음에 베타와 남다 줄에 제비틴도 아니 배서 미세 바데 아니 안보 신도 따고 도레스 안보 신도 도레스
So if you don't make effort to understand this correctly, and you don't make effort in order to generate this pure view within your mind stream, mental continuum, here this refers to generating it such that it's very clear and without any mistake, without any kind of error. This view of selflessness, here again, the self which is being negated or is autonomy, the idea that the self exists on its own without depending upon something other than it. If you don't make effort to generate that pure view within your mental continuum, by having negated the object as it's apprehended by the misconception of the self, here again the object which is held or misapprehended, which is held by this misconception of the self, is the autonomy or not depend. It's a quality of not depending on another, and you have to do this by means of, you have to properly negate that by means of scripture and reason, which is of definitive meaning. Here, scripture and reasoning refers to the employment of rational analysis and critical reasoning to determine this situation, the actual situation. And then the scriptures which are of definitive meaning are supportive evidence for that ascertainment that one achieves through reasoning. And if you don't do that, then it's extremely it's a case of someone being extremely dull. That one's intellect is extremely dull, because such a person is considered to be someone who doesn't think at all about completely losing the heart of the path which takes one to liberation and omniscience.
Oh yeah. 타바다 탐자 전부 저비 남지 소도야 치면야 봐 좀시로 제제 다르와 다 인상 다 뭐든지 우리 때나 바꿔 봐 인상 다 롱그 줘야 되라 아니 당정 봉거 담발라 아니 다 땡주 시셔 거에 대중가 시원하시 아니 도이 시셔 거에 다 땡주 시셔 거와다 도이 시 땡주 되라 아니 취지 잡아기 남대글롱 나와 잡아기 아니 오마 주벨롱 아니 시자와 파발의 시자와 아니 기보 가소래 누르기 대인바이다 가르치게 누르제 되는다 갖고 있어야 돼 대제라 아니 시발라체 아니 단적이 시정하고 대제라 아사와 섬점마야 또 시지도 쓰고 하래
So then, in terms of showing how this subsequent section is divided into showing that one needs to get rid of this misapprehension of self or grasping at a self, has two divisions. First, how it's explained in treatises composed by Indian masters, and then the way in which it's taught in a sutra. And the first of these has five different treatises that are cited here. There's the treatise by the splendid master Dharmakirti, then also Chandrakirti, the master Chandrakirti's introduction to the middle way is cited. Then also the master protector Nagarjuna, 60 verses on emptiness is quoted, and then also the 400 verses of Master Aryadeva, and then there's a quote by Master. These will all come down below, and Shanti Deva, etc., and then a sutra.
난디 남대가 가수 안에 단생기 샤야 가야당 안에 다다 가사야게 남대가 롱타와데 집바체 같이 다 카가래데 다가바 가수데 안에 틈바인자 되게 셰셰다고 말해. 그봐 남대가 가수 다데 다라바 가사나지 투비제 그래. 그봐 대만도 라시지 투와 가기로 말했대. 다 라자 투비제 주바 zemba 아니 가서래 네가 당신 전에 대신에 막아봐 아니 난 오면 내가 가서 당신 참 못가봐 당신 전에 다 되게 대면도 한 가서래 다 남들 가서 라시 주와 그 다가기요 말아 와 어디래 다 되려와 대인상 취지 차배 되나 반내 취지 차배 뒤에서 매번이 대범하니 니만이 연대 견다 녀져와 대단다서 빠와니 대다 요라 마도마 인기 시주타가 민 세대기다 가그아래 그와 니시우 매바니 세대 다 셈zam비루라 셈zam다 란주바디비 가사가 당진 오 당진 디게 현유시 마숑 바라 아니 텐다와게 아니 당진데 빠와니 바 마이 시거래 와 연된 견다 녀저베 연된 견다 녀저베 대단 다서 빠와니 시가라 연된 견다 녀저베 시가라 대자데 사제진 오라면에 연된도 통화 이동와 통해다 이동자 라바 조대와다 세단데 안에 사제진 오라면에 이동와 통화 견다 녀저와 연된 견다 녀저베 안에 대자단 다서 대제단 빠와테 대다 요라 마도와 인지 치주 다그 민 세가라 아니 대다 요라 마도와 인지 치주 다그 민 세가데 다다 단다디 가소래 대샤 코랑기 샤유메 바 또와당 세당 코랑기 샤유메 바 또웨 아니 대샤 봉세 테마이 바체 라 대샤라 당진연나 리지고하래 대샤 공오르 집에 당진당 세당 공오르 집에 당진연나 아니 대다 유라 마도와 이수타기 미세드 마이 지고하래 와 단단디 대자공고 단전 매회나 대다 유라 마도와 인지 치주타기 미세드 당전 코라라 와 당전 코랑 대다게 자와 당전지 샤유메바 통연 차단이게 자와 당전지 샤유메바 통연 안에 차배 차단이 봉화 좋아래 또 자고 지그래 자 유라 마도와 인지 치도 타기미 안에 해야지 하고서
대사단 시랑기 ngor alas
여자당 제단기 뭐 당진 연나 안에 대자가 샤유에 바도베 로티기 안 대자 봉그래 센트리도와 다 대자당 제단기 뭐지 당진 메드나 안에 대다 유라 마도마 세대 안에 티기 자와 당진 말이 바기 안에 샤유에 바 통에 티기 봉그래 와 데려와 이나 라다 진다 미디 빌로지 그 방고를 마도 아니 진다 미디 바 마인 바가 로기 pom미 pom와데 남들 코란 게 나라 참소 몽당 가미지 신dun이와 차지 미 제니까 참바당 참바데 아니 세당 개념 보 조고하래 와에 what 조고하래데 아니 대 세당 가상하면 본주라생 원주와리시 권여와리만도 세당 자완에 봉지 말에 많이 바가래서나 단지 말이 받아 진당 원가 말이 시고와 어디선이자 다 두스잖아 지고 인지리 아니 자와 코란치 야야
So then the first of the citations from treatises that are used here as evidence to show that it's necessary to get rid of the grasping at a self or misapprehension of a self. Here, the first one is cited from the Master Dharmakirti, his compendium of valid knowledge, valid cognition. And as we mentioned earlier, this text is actually presenting the Yogacara view, which holds that the selflessness of persons is, or the grasping at a self of persons has as its conceived object the person existing as as having a self, which is a self-sufficient substance. And there's a difference in terms of the view of self, which is negated in that system of Dharmakirti and the system we're mastering here, studying here, the system of Chandrakirti, in that, as we mentioned already, in Chandrakirti's system of Prasangika Madhyamika, the conceived object is the self-existing as if it existed in this sort of autonomous way or existed by means of its own intrinsic nature, that notion of self. But nevertheless, the way in which the way in which it is necessary to get rid of the wrong notion of self is the same in both systems. That is, the idea that one has to get rid of this notion of self in order to become liberated from samsara is exactly the same in both systems. So these verses from the Compendium of Valid Cognition says that without refuting its object, one is not able to get rid of that. To get rid of desire and hatred, which are connected with seeing good qualities and faults, you get rid of them by means of here it says not seeing, or you could read this as seeing the absence or seeing the non-existence of their objects. So what's being referred to here, there's again different ways to read this section of the verse. One could say that that in the case of attachment and aversion, or desire and hatred, they arise in conjunction with or by virtue of seeing their objects in a certain way. In the case of desire, it views its object as if it had special good qualities, making it especially attractive. As we mentioned yesterday, that it exaggerates the goodness or the desirability of the object, and then grasps at it in that way. And then likewise, hatred exaggerates or superimposes upon the object a degree of undesirability or disagreeableness that the object doesn't actually possess, and then it engages in its object like that. So in order to get rid of them, you have to, one has to see that their objects don't exist. Here it says you get rid of them by not seeing their objects. This refers to sort of a knowledge which recognizes the non-existence of the conceived object as it's being misconceived or misapprehended by that kind of the mental afflictions, whether you're talking about desire or hatred, or, it's the same thing. Let's see. 두차시랑 덴지기 ngorgyupa.
여자당 세당라 덴지유나. 아니 대자 그 샤유에 봐 통이 로티기 대자 봉선다다 지고래. 와. 나 대자 그 ngor집이 당진 메드나. 아니 된다 니가 대다 유람 마동외 세 대다기 유람 마도바 대다기 자와 당진 유람 마동외 당진 유람 마동외 당진 다음에 또 로티기 아니 봉그리.
So another way of reading this this passage, these two lines, is if we take that attachment, or here we can talk about ignorance, which has the character of desire. We can talk about ignorance, which has the character of hatred. So in those cases, the base there is ignorance, but it is qualified by either desire or hatred in the way in which it's misperceiving or misconceiving its objects. So in that case, if we read the verse that way, then we would say that by seeing the non-existence of its objects, that or not seeing those objects is in reference to not seeing the object there, which would be the thing existing in its own intrinsic way, or existing in its own autonomous way. And that sort of knowledge, which sees the non-existence of that falsely conceived object, is itself serves to get rid of desire and hatred, which have that kind of character.
Oh yeah, 대다 유람 마동외 인기 치주타기 미 셰데 다 셰 치료지 반자 체매 수바데 덤바나 대 치다순 유 대 치다순 유 아니 당정 유 신제 바라 마도바 아니 치료게 아니 체마 수바데 캅다와 기 자와네 덤바 나신 덤바 딸 덤바 나신 아니 나 셈기 반자 빠와네 어디 대담에 말이 캅기 아니 체마수 감발에서 체마수가 덤바 나신 말이 나 셈기 띵기 반자 빠와나 대다 체바 마인지 워낙 가르레에서나 왜냐 당진 다부티 유라 치다 순위 텐 당진 디기 유라 치다 순위 텐다 라다 딜레나 디가레나 라자 투비테르와 치다 순위 텐 라자 투비텐데 라자 투비 다도 추와데 메바 톤네 담범 담에 왔다나 팝 데네 담에 오심데 또 데네 콤바 콘네 콘도 제와레 데네 봉거와 순서 세다 봉거와 순서
So then the end of that verse says, but so one is able to get rid of desire and hatred, etc., by not seeing their objects, but it's not it's not as it is done externally. Is the end of that verse, and then the explanation of this is that when one wants to draw out, pull out some sort of external thing that's to be gotten rid of, such as a thorn which has stuck into you, like a thorn stuck in your foot or something, you don't need to rely upon refuting the object as it is held by that thorn or that's afflicting you. You don't have to do that. You have to refute that. Rather, just as something like you can use something like a needle to draw out that thing, like a thorn or whatever, from the root. It doesn't work like that when one's talking about the getting rid of the abandonment of things that are to be gotten rid of, that are within the mind, are internal and within the mind. It doesn't work like that. Instead, if you ask how is one to do that? If you take something like such as grasping at a self, and here grasping at a self, again, if one is reading that in accordance with Master Dharmakirti's own interpretation of self, grasping at a self of persons, then one would say that it's the self that's being misapprehended or grasped at here is the self as or a person as having a self-sufficient, existing as a self-sufficient substance. And in order to get rid of that, it's necessary to get rid of that by seeing that the object which is held, as it is held by that grasping at a self, is non-existent. One has to see that the object which is held by that misconception of the self is non-existent.
Oh yeah, that church trabaki namre gi longde xie zhai de ma qi ne da tanju wi lu la an dawa gi bandan dawa gi an xie zhai de la ni mo jian na ma lin ji zuo le da le chung wa lo yi tong ju qi dan ni di yu du duo jian ne na jo ba yi dan ni guo ba qi se dian ba de是吧dan di gi bandan da wei xi ji是吧你们jian na ma lin ji zuo le se ga na an cha so ni mo 차소 뉴몬데 교용카르레사나 차소라 때네 아니 레라 때네 아니 깨와 예수의 인잠자 아니 예수의 인잠자네 아니 깨위네가 그 동안 다 깨위 동안 알아서 아니 가위 동안 다 마보시 송하러 오 텐데 연구 인상 차소 뉴몬데 깨가 소시捐탐제 중사 자와 카르레사나 아니 당신来中华通完哪是多的？因为你们讲那马里就做来带来中华落去通出去，是这样吧的。
So then after presenting the evidence from the treatise of Master Dharmakirti, then next is given a quotation from Chandrakirti, Master Chandrakirti's introduction to the Middle Way. The verse says that when one sees with one's mind, with one's intellect, sees that all of the faults, the mental afflictions and their faults, arise from this, from the wrong view of the disintegrating collection or transitory collection, then that's explained in the commentary previously, where it says that. Where it says that the Master Chandrakirti also holds the same view, where he says that the mental afflictions of attachment, etc. Attachment, for example, is the motive force which causes us to engage in actions. Those actions, those karma, contaminated activities induce us to, or leave imprints upon our mind streams. Those eventually ripen into birth, as we mentioned yesterday. And then once one is born, one inevitably ages and undergoes all of the other kinds of defects, has to experience all of the defects of existence, such as suffering and so forth. All of these, when one sees that all of those arise from misapprehension of the self or grasping at the self, and then the rest of the verse explains.
Oh yeah, that jikta kasa shuwa na chen chen jikta se na ranjuji. Ane nga dang nga yuwa karu la mine. Ane nga rawandu chuwa zimbi zimbachi la jikta as. Tela ane kasa shuwa na chen chen nga tam la mi batang. Ana nga dang nga yuwa niga la mi baki. Ane jikta chigi nyi che tangbo tela nga zamji jikta. Niwa tela nga yuwa zimbi jikta sigwari. o jikda o yinzang da tenda di kasore jikzo tenda wi ani jikda tela tena chungwa kasa nga zo uma juba ko goyage tangbo nga she dala xin di xin yu chi dagi di xin wala cha chebe so ju chen da rawa me ba dola ni chugan de kasa dewa chingcha iba tangbo da nga ji jikda che di ji so nga yuwa ji jikda che o tu chen 대인자다 된다 가서래 통화나 아니 대고 저 본데 주나 다 견 탐제게 잡아 아 누가 탐제게 잡아 아니 직단이 어디 여바이 인장 아니 누가 메드나 누가 게 잡아 직다 고고와 인자 대고대지 대고 저 본데 주나 대체 당真做到有看啥给打，南角外日本我把送的，看这里是呢，你带来就话老一团就行。当年你有多钱呢？南角把一当年光把钱，是吧？当年你有多钱呢？先打几档，南角把一当年光把钱是个打你的话，打你个人他谈不得，他也别打。俺这个美的就俺打的钱，是吧？俺这个美的就打，俺的俺有几大个美的就俺的俺打的钱。连着我的打呢，俺这一几点都没有都多把钱的，没有都多把钱我的，听着我的，俺的卡说的，卡东西送呢，第一点都那就把一打呢，我把钱是干哪？这钱我打。我写的，俺那嘎接的，先看了让看了，先看了呀，让马来比让我的，俺那他搞不起个嘞，那就把一打你搞不起，呀。
So then the rest of the verse, this verse here says, or the commentary on that says that once one has seen that all of the faults of existence, birth, death, etc., and that they and the desire, etc., all of these mental afflictions originate from grasping at a self. Then one will give rise to the desire to negate them and get rid of that, to negate that and get rid of that. That here is a reference to the grasping at a self, which is the wrong view of the perishable collection here, where we in the verse, it says that when with one's mind, intellectually initially and then subsequently through realization, sees that all of the faults, all of these faults and the mental afflictions arise from this wrong view of the transitory collection. then it says that that a yogi will, a yogi or yogini will, having understood the object of that of this, having understood the self, which is the object of this, the yogi or yogini will negate the self. Here, the term self is being used in two senses. The first of these is the conventionally existing self. As we mentioned yesterday, when we talk about this wrong view of the perishable collection, it has as its observed object either the mere eye or the mind, the mere mind. The way this works is that, as we mentioned yesterday also, that it can take either of those as its appearing object, observed object. And the observed object here is conventionally existent and is the mere eye or the mind. These conventionally exist, and then the wrong view of the perishable collection exaggerates their existence or superimposes upon them a degree of autonomy that they don't actually possess, so that autonomous, exaggerated sense of I or sense of mind is what is the conceived object of this misconception of the or the wrong view of the perishable collection here. This is the wrong view of the perishable collection, again, is referring to these I or mine as they exist within ourselves individually, not looking at someone else outside of us. So these, the verse here where it says, a yogi or yogini having realized or understood that the self here, the conventional self, is the conventionally existing self, is the object of this being the wrong view of the perishable collection. Then the yogi or yogini will cease, negate the self. The second self here is the self which is to be negated either through reasoning, through rational investigation, and so that's the non-existent self, the conceived object, which is fictitious and is superimposed upon the conventionally existing I or self. And so initially one understands this and negates it through reasoning, then subsequently taking that negation or recognition of the non-existence of this misconceived fictitious self, that becomes the object for meditative cultivation, such that eventually one develops a direct realization, intuitive realization of this reality of the non-existence of this fictitious self.
Oh yeah, teta di ode nanjo pai tanu ko ba che se ki ta nanjo ba se de te suan na shi te che ko ba che sa wa sun so tiang te kwana ni gombe gomba bi cha ko be sta ten de ji ta pong ya de ni gun ta ni wa ku ji ta ba ji ta pong ya de ani ti ka so re xian yu ga de ane dame be dan la bengen dame be dan la bengen ji ane gom go wa yin zang te kwa na ni gom ba bi cha go be nan jo ba yi dan gom ba che chen so re oh yeah.
So then it says here, the commentary on that is that this verse finally is that Master Chandrakirti clearly explains this in the introduction to the Middle Way. And the line where it says yogi or yogini has to negate, or a yogi or yogini negates the self, This also shows that it's not merely the sort of negation of the self as it's determined through investigation and reasoning. Rather, it's then the commentary says that with regard to that, since it's the case, since it's necessary for someone who is meditating or developing the knowledge of realization of reality. Therefore, Master Chandrakirti uses the word yogi or yogini here.
Oh, yeah. Nanjo shesun so si ta digi ane tawa trapagi ane kaso koala so nim ta toni to ko wa tawa trapilung ke she te che ta di je la ane gombo lu ji ane gombo ko wa gomba imba ni chu de gombo lu ji gomba tamba yin de ta de gombo lu ji shung kawa so wa re sana ane riba tu che ka so wa tene dawa kunji teme ni mo meje che kang teji tene yong shena no da da ni mo kunji jam kang ki teshi gyuna na tene chungwa tongwa de tene jewa ma je ba tene ka se te ko tene che ba chok sung chen o de sung ba re de da riba chu ju bi che te ki ra da de tene dawa kunji ju se de tetra jusa de ane jigzola tawa rewa jigta taran chu chongre denzin de wa denzin am jigzola tawa khare chuna tenra wa de ane tawa kunji jure tawa se tra da tawa nga kasang to nimo jirung ka shaba na shi chani rewa o ta tarda da tawa chonjenda chujumda do shi chonjenda loda la sowaki ane tawa kunji ki ane gyure se tene tawa kunji ju wa teme nimo meni de se ga nimo tamje je tawa mari ba bam jigda mena ane nimo ba shanam ane jeje ki tawa nimo me ba ka jeje ki tawi nimo me ba yinjang ane tele je ba ki nimo shanam ko mari se wa tene tawa kunji ke teme nimo meje de 윤전 대체나 대지 대니 용시나 라 다다와 지조라 다밤 인진 마리 바기 현유 가벽이 동반이 용서 시나 동반이 용서 시 대지 대니 용시나 동반이 땡라팝 현유 가벽 동반이 땡라팝 안에 대권배 다다니 목군도 장 안에 tawa 당신 마르밤 직다 태당 자와 직다당 마르바 장배 안에 텔레테네 주에 tawa당 이모 시행 강가 바방 안에 세기레 장그레 대지테니 용시나 다다니 목군도 장 강게 대시 교전나 쓰나 안에 대지테니 용시나 쓰는 직다당
So then this is also the thought of the protector Nagarjuna as well, and this system or approach is also the noble thought of the protector Nagarjuna. And as evidence for that, it's the commentary here cites the 60 verses of reasoning. And here the line says that is the cause of all views. Without that, the mental afflictions do not arise. Therefore, having thoroughly understood that, one completely purifies all of the all views and mental afflictions. And then the verse continues from there. We'll deal with that second verse later. The first verse here says that meaning here you could take it as the wrong view of the perishable collection and or this basic ignorance, which is the root of samsara, is the source of all views. Here views. The view here could be the view of la gola di deni tawa kongikyu tawa kongikyu tawa
ine tawa kuji ju 세가라 덴제 마르 밤 질다 테 타와 가면도 안에 타와 셴 kuji 주래 와 로다당 저와 그 타와가 그나 타와 셴 주래.
So then that basic ignorance or wrong view of the perishable collection is the source of all other views. One can gloss it here, referring to the wrong views, which are as we mentioned yesterday, the view that grasps at extremes such as nihilism, eternalism, the view that holds grasping at wrong views as being the supreme or best views, wrong sorts of behavior and so forth. All of those come out of this basic ignorance. And without that, the mental afflictions don't arise. As we've explained, that this ignorance, which is the root of samsara, is the motive force which causes us to engage in activities, create karma, that then impel, or that serves as the source out of which the other mental afflictions, such as attachment and desire and hatred, arise. Without that, those mental afflictions do not arise. Therefore, if one thoroughly understands that, here understanding that means, this is referring to understanding of emptiness. If one completely understands emptiness, which is the non-existence of the conceived object of ignorance, that is, as mentioned, the kind of autonomy or intrinsic nature, intrinsic existence that we superimpose upon things. If one fully understands that, then one completely purifies, or completely destroys, one could say, or completely purifies oneself of all of the views and mental afflictions.
Oh yeah, 대시 대니 요새나 따다니 뭐 요소 장 딱 강기 대시 주나 주냠나 따오나 가소래 대 현유 렌즈 말해봐 질다기 현유 까바기 아니 현유 까바 현유 까바기 동반이대 아니 강기 아니 현유 까고 동반이대 시기래서나 대시 주냠나 때내 중화 통화대 다 라신지 주와 때나 바바기 준전 땡중 통화라 땡중라 때내 통화 때내 중화 통화대 땡중라 때내 땡중게 따라 때내 아니 당전기 현유 까비 동반이协助 그래 와 때내 중화 통화대에서 네 땡중 간데래서 때내 개바 마개바 땡중의 간데래서 간데질에서 그래서 있잖아 때내 개장 마개바 같이 개라 개바 때문에 때내 개외라시 여마이 개라라라 간데 동시죠 소소한 나시 전에 마주시 도란시 소한 나시 전에 땡중 간데질에서는 규제를 때내 개바래데 라시지 마개바 야 때내 개바 마개바 땡중데 때내 계신 라시지 마개바데 tenyi chenpa choki sung te kwana niji ne lu tutsuxindu chenpi ane jomdende ki sungpa re kanto suna tajungde injire machubi shi doye kaso kashi kenla jewa tenme shi tenye jewe rashi yomayi kenla hala kade tongshi sung ode
So then, so it completely purifies all views and the mental afflictions if one thoroughly understands, thoroughly knows that emptiness. So thorough understanding refers to first initially establishing the view through reasoning, but thorough understanding of it entails meditative development of that understanding and cultivation of that understanding through meditation practice. Then it says that one who or by what does one understand that? Does one know that? Referring here to emptiness, which is the absence of intrinsic existence, things not having intrinsic existence. That emptiness is that absence of intrinsic existence is what is the counteragent to the and is the negation of the object as it's misconceived by this wrong view that grasps at a self. If one says, how does one come to know that? It's through seeing dependent origination. Then the last part of the verse says that the supreme knower of reality has said that which originates in dependence is unarisen. So dependent origination, seeing dependent origination is the source, is the way in which one comes to understand emptiness. Things' lack of intrinsic existence is established by means of the reason that things arise or exist in dependence. They exist in dependence upon other things. So where the supreme knower of reality has said that, this is referring to the Lord Buddha, has said that things that have arisen, arise in dependence, are unarisen. What that's referring to is that they have not arisen by means of some kind of intrinsic nature, or they don't arise autonomously. Rather, they arise in dependence upon other things. And then this is the same. Where did he say that, you might ask? Where did the Buddha say that? He stated that in the Sutra La Matru.
아니 가시 째라 째와 테마지 주견라 째와데 마지 시와데 라신지 마지 왔어 가시 째라 째와 테마지 테라 째위라시 여마이 테라 라신지 째와 여마이 째라 라라와 칸데 아라왕 똥바레 째라 라라 칸데 똥바셰 째라 주견 셴라 라라바인다 아라왕 마주바인다 째라 라라 칸데 똥바셰.
So he explained this in a sutra which was requested by a Naga king named Anavatapta, I think. And he, in that sutra, the Buddha said that which arises from conditions is not arisen. It doesn't have the is unarisen, meaning that which arises from conditions is unarisen. It doesn't arise by means of it doesn't originate or arise by means of intrinsic nature. So this statement in the sutra is evidence for and demonstrates that things that arise by means of causes and conditions do not arise autonomously. They don't arise by means of some kind of intrinsic nature, which doesn't depend upon other causes and conditions.
Yes. Oh yeah. The la parcela la sociale, right? 주제라 제와 인장 라왕가 마제와레스 어때 라왕가 마제와 어떻게 따왔다나 봐 콜레 딜레 디사쇼지 디인승과레 라 공단창기 강제라 제와 테마제 테네 제와라시 여마이 제라라라 칸데 동셰스 송 텔레 사와 던주메 텔레 사와 사와지 아니다 동이된 동미스 던주메스 아니 진 초사도장 내면나 대담지 돈이 떠와송 초사도장 그 내면나 텔라산로 떠와서나 아니 초사야 두부장 아버지나 대담지 아니 돈이 또 그래. Tsongkhapa
Tsoksak Dipchang Machena?
Chesona. Ani riba desano tana telatena toni dogure sesung arashicha.
So this verse out of this sutra has been praised by the master of Guntang, Jampayang, as being like sort of like the clearest explanation of or scriptural source, a source which is as the most clear in being able to establishing the view of emptiness. There's no source which is more clear than this particular scriptural verse. That is that things that, and he restates it in his own words, saying that things that have arisen from causes and conditions are empty of intrinsic existence. They don't. It's because things arise from causes and conditions that they cannot possess. They're empty, devoid of the autonomy, any kind of autonomy, being able to arise on their own. So where it says things that arise from causes and conditions are unarisen, the unarisen there means they haven't arisen autonomously. They haven't arisen on their own. And so he says that in order to, if you practice purification of negativities and you accumulate merit, then this quotation will be something that one can or will function, will enable one to understand emptiness, this view more readily.
Oya ta di dewa de ma shu da ta jin de xie ta wa ni mo jian dang se ga na ten ni ta wa kun ji ju se ta wa ni mo jian dang ani ni mo xian kun ji de ja kong do la so wa ni mo xian kun ji ju lu ju yi ani wo kai len xie bi den zhen de se ta den zhen de ta ten ni ta wa kun ji ju se de den zhen de xian是吧 代年居于军战机是的，有见了计划。代年居于军战机，让西机马机比我与铁矿呢也多白是啊，有见了计于军战机，让西机马机把电了拍，让西机马机把电了拍比让西机马机把多比东半，俺的落地，我说呀，我说个三两的，我说的多，多年我说多的落地宽白。 아니我与天你我马这边我与天你多白我与铁矿那也多白谁干了多你多白 아니我天这位认真的帮我点了让些没把通完呢我让些就准备准备水穷啊让些的没把通完呢是 我让心里面把通完你谁干了？大家让心里面把通完呢？我让心里出了准备水中没把没准备吃了，是吧？是说啊，大家让心里面把通完你，大家让心里，大家让往的没把通完你呢？俺这让往的出了准备水马上完了，俺这太阳过嘛的，
So then the commentary on this explains. That the grasping at things as real, grasping at this grasping at things as being real, this ignorance, which is being discussed here, is called holding that things. I'm sorry, holding at.
是，
你们到我你们清当，
到我你们的你们先规矩我开人协议电子的，
我开人，
对，可能电子可能管这个的，电子的。
So this grasping at things is.
我开人现在电报主要开2倍，俺你的
So this grasping at things as being real is, which is called here, holding things to be real, accepting or asserting that things are real. It's just another way of glossing this kind of grasping at things as being real. This is the cause of all of the other forms of wrong views, which are mentally afflicted, which are mental afflictions or mentally afflicted, and then all of the other forms of mental afflictions as well, desire and hatred and so forth. And so that grasping at things as being real is by means of the reason of dependent origination, that by recognition of this, or seeing the reason that things arise in dependence, is by means of that one can understand the reality of things, which is that they're not arisen by means of their own intrinsic nature or intrinsic existence. So the reality of things here refers to emptiness. That is, things in reality are empty of possessing an intrinsic nature or this kind of autonomy that is falsely conceived by this misconception or grasping that things are real. So by understanding that reality of things, here understanding that reality again is first developed through rational investigation and reasoning. And once one has established that, then one has to cultivate that understanding in meditative concentration and through meditation practice until one gets a kind of absolutely vivid and direct realization, direct perception of this reality. So that kind of understanding is taught as being able to get rid of, taught as that which is getting rid of the wrong views and other mental afflictions, and seeing the non-existence of that nature. Where it's here, where it says seeing the non-existence of that nature. Here, that nature. Or is the false nature, which is, or the false notion of intrinsic existence, which is falsely ascribed to things, that rangshinde me partona toni rangshinde Rangshin de mepa
tonganis, Rangshin Rawa, Yala Ramara, Rangshin de mepa tongani, Ani, more Rashi Truas and more Nam Rawa Trua Simbi, Zimbati, you search Mashunala.
So then that nature is the idea that, or a nature of autonomy, the nature of a false nature, which is as if the thing was able to stand alone or to exist autonomously. When one sees the non-existence, the absence of that nature, then the object which is grasped, or I should say, the object which is held, which holds that things exist by means of their own intrinsic existence, is I'm sorry, I have to start over that translation of that section, that passage. So seeing the non-existence of that nature, which is autonomy of things, does not arise without the refutation of the object, which is holding things as if they were established by means of their own intrinsic existence or own intrinsic nature. So intrinsic nature here is another word for autonomy, being able to exist without depending upon others. That's not that seeing the non-existence of that kind of nature does not arise without the refutation of the object, which is that non-existent or nature ascribed to things.
Yes. Oh yeah. That day, Gomoluruki Ribatu showing the Maatani, that says it the Maatan Chacha. That day, and I said you to any Papa Lagi, any young says it Hantella. Didn't timber Papa Lessumbani, not Tansilla. You are tired. Then they literally want to see the Timu Nature, taking your motor, Timu temperature, then just what you want to turn at the moment. Take it back with the Konanyabachas, a guitar chinsari, not transport.
So this then the next verse or next section then says that
Long Tedan to buy a guitar to buy a guitar, literally want to see Kazashiba or dairy.
So then next in this section comes showing that the chief disciple, the chief spiritual son of Nagarjuna has the same basic position. We've already, J. Rinpoche has already cited the verse in which Master Aryadeva has stated the same thing. This is the verse which we discussed yesterday, where a couple of verses actually where it says that just as the body, all of the different sense organs rely upon the body organ, the basic body organ or body faculty, then all of the different mental afflictions reside upon or based upon this ignorance. And then the verse, that section continues by saying that by seeing dependent origination, one is able to negate that ignorance and then therefore negate all of the stop and eliminate eventually all of the mental afflictions. So that was discussed previously.
Yula Dame Tona, Sibi Saban Gaba Churu, Janet, 6 years. That dinner, Titambani with the Chamendo. Shava, Roma Tamani with the Mando. Sibi Saban Namshedi, Yunam Tei Chuyulo. Yula Dame Tona, Sibi Saban Gaba Churu, Sibi Saban de Carrera, that's about Jiji, Court Jiji, Zawa, and a dancing Rava, Denzin Mariba. Sibi Saban Namshedi, Denzin Namshedi. Yunam Tei Julo say that Denzin Digi, Shenyu Carre Sana, I shan't Kalaya, Mala Baki, around Wati, and a Denzin Digi Shenyu Re. Sibi Saben Namshidi Yunam Tei Julo. That is, and the Til Della Yonadela, Yula Dameton and Sibi Saben Gabashuru, Sekala, Tedavi Sibi Saben, Denzin Tegi, and a Shenyu, and a Shan Kalaya, Maldewe. Around Wadi, and it never tonani, you Chidamana Gongo, you can't decide in I never tonani, and it tender our Toma de Kwambala Dene, and it Sibi Sabi, Dinzing the Sabi, the Kaba to Gure.
So this is also explained in another verse from the 400 of Master Aryadeva. Here it just cites the last two lines out of this verse, but the first two lines of the verse say that the root of existence is consciousness, and and objects are its domain. objects are its domain. So what that's referring to then is that here the consciousness, which is referred to as the root of existence, is a misapprehension that grasps at things as misconception that things are real. As mentioned previously, that's the ignorance, which is the root of samsara. And then the objects there are inner and outer phenomena, which are the domain or sort of range of that kind of consciousness, and then it holds them as being real. So that then the last line of the verse here says that when one actually, when it misconceives or its objects, that kind of consciousness, it holds its objects as if they existed autonomously, as if they existed without depending upon other things, and that misconceived object of that consciousness has to be negated. So, and then the verse continues by saying that when one sees that there's no self in the objects, this is again referring to recognition of the absence of the conceived object within the objects to which that conceived object is attributed or ascribed. So seeing that they don't have self, seeing that there's no self in the objects, there's no autonomous nature, no intrinsic existence, then the seed of existence is stopped. Here, seed of existence again is another name for this basic misconception that grasps at things as being real. The first the consciousness which is grasping at things as real. So then the commentary here just glosses that by saying that by seeing that the self, which is the object, which is So here, seeing the non-existence of the self, which is the observed object here, or the perceived object, which is held by the grasping at a self, by seeing that, then it cuts the root of existence, this ignorance, which is the root of existence.
Oh yeah, that digi, ani loben papa lagi, ani sijabi sije tane, that do che, that didn't tell, ani papa jujin shiva lagi, there's that there's shasha.
So after that, then that was Aryadeva's presentation of this, and then after this, Master Shantideva has a quotation and then a statement and then a quotation from the sutra, but we'll leave it for here right now.
Oh, yeah.